I want to spend a little bit of time telling you not about the Federalist Papers, but the Anti-Federalist Papers. Mark, so boring. Not in the least. I will introduce you to the Anti-Federalist Papers so the backbenchers can delve into them and start talking about them as well. They're very, very interesting. Now, obviously, I don't agree with all of them. These were prominent individuals who opposed the Constitution being ratified. And they include some very serious people. George Mason, Sam Adams, Richard Henry Lee, James Monroe, Robert Yates. Who's Robert Yates? One of the most prominent in his day from New York. James Winthrop and others. And I'm not doing this just to do it. I'm doing this to link back to what's going on today and to see what you think about it. So you had Hamilton from New York, the most outspoken proponent in the Federalist Papers, and Yates among one of the most outspoken opponents, both from New York. And here's what's interesting, and I talk about this a lot. The founders, in the case of the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, they weren't debating over what we debate today, redistributing wealth in favor of a heavily regulated society, supporting a massive tax system and so forth. They were debating over the best way to secure individual liberty. And so those who opposed the Constitution opposed it because they thought it didn't go far enough in protecting the individual. And also keep in mind, this is before the Bill of Rights, because, among others, George Mason, a brilliant man of Virginia, he voted against the Constitution because it didn't have a Bill of Rights. Anyway, Robert Yates writes in part in Anti-Federalist 17, "This new government is to possess absolute and uncontrollable powers, legislative, executive, and judicial, with respect to every object to which it extends. For by the last clause of Section 8, Article 1st, it is declared that the Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or office thereof," unquote. And by the 6th article, it's declared, quote, "that this Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be made in pursuance thereof," Constitution and the laws of the United States, "and the treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, and anything in the Constitution or law of any state to the contrary notwithstanding," unquote. Yates says, "It appears from these articles that there's no need of any intervention of the state governments between the Congress and the people to execute any power vested in the general government, and that the Constitution and laws of every state are nullified and declared void, so far as they are or shall be inconsistent with this Constitution, or the laws made in pursuant of it, or with treaties made under the authority of the United States." He's saying we just wiped out the states. The government then, so far as it extends, is a complete one, and not a confederation. It is as much one complete government as that of New York or Massachusetts, has as absolute and perfect powers to make and execute all laws, appoint officers, institute courts, declare offenses and annex penalties with respect to every object to which it extends, as any other in the world. So far, therefore, as its powers reach, all ideas of confederation are given up and lost. He says it's true this government is limited to certain objects, or to speak more properly, some small degree of power is still left to the states. But a little attention to the powers vested in the general government will convince every candid man that if it is capable of being executed, all that is reserved for the individual states must very soon be annihilated, except so far as they are barely necessary to the organization of the general government. The powers of the general legislature extend to every case that is of the least importance. There is nothing valuable to human nature, nothing dear to free men. But what is within its power? It has the authority to make laws which will affect the lives, the liberty, and property of every man in the United States. Nor can the Constitution or laws of any state in any way prevent or impede the full and complete execution of every power given. Robert Yates of New York, Anti-Federalist, number 17. It's longer, but I don't have time and desire to read all of it. What do you make of what he said? Was he prescient? He says, what we've done here is given the federal government authority over the states and the ability to destroy the states, except as basic functionaries, so that the federal government and the citizens of the states will have a relationship where the states no longer will. But let's proceed. Now, this is what I do, ladies and gentlemen. I read this stuff. I study it. I go back to it over the years. This is what gives me life and breath. How we came to be as a society. Now, Robert Yates, a delegate to the Constitutional Convention from New York, wrote under the name Brutus in the Anti-Federalist Papers. Here's what else he said. The real effect of this system of government, writing in opposition to the Constitution, will therefore be brought home to the feelings of the people through the medium of the judicial power. He said it's, moreover, of great importance to examine with care the nature and extent of the judicial power, because those who are to be vested with it are to be placed in a situation altogether unprecedented in a free country. They are to be rendered totally independent, both of the people and the legislature, both with respect to their offices and their salaries. No errors they may commit can be corrected by any power above them, if any such power there be, nor can they be removed from office for making ever so many erroneous adjudications. The only causes for which they can be displaced is conviction of treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. This part of the plan is so modeled as to authorize the courts not only to carry into execution the powers expressly given, but where there are wanting or ambiguously, he writes, expressed, to supply what is wanting by their own decisions. He's defining the activist judiciary before there is a judiciary. He also warned that the Supreme Court would not be constrained by the language of the Constitution. He wrote, they will give the sense of every article of the Constitution that may from time to time come before them. And in their decisions, they will not confine themselves to any fixed or established rules, but will determine according to what appears to them the reason and spirit of the Constitution. The opinions of the Supreme Court, whatever they may be, will have the force of law, because there is no power provided in the Constitution that can correct their errors or control their adjudications. From this court, there is no appeal. And when the courts will have a precedent before them of a court which extended its jurisdiction in opposition to an act of the legislature, it is not to be expected that they will extend theirs, especially when there is nothing in the Constitution expressly against it. This power in the judicial, he writes, will enable them to mold the government into almost any shape they please. And Yates predicted the process by which the federal judiciary would achieve primacy over state governments. He wrote, perhaps nothing could have been better conceived to facilitate the abolition of the state governments than the Constitution of the Judicial. That's what they called it, the Judicial. They will be able to extend the limits of the general government gradually and by insensible degrees, and to accommodate themselves to the temper of the people. Their decisions on the meaning of the Constitution will commonly take place in cases which arise between individuals with which the public will not be generally acquainted. One adjudication will form a precedent to the next, and this to the following one. Many of you never heard of Robert Yates. He was a patriot. He was a genius. I wonder if you agree with him. Richard, Los Angeles, the great KABC. Go.
Right on. Good to talk to you, sir.
Yes, sir.
You're a big part of my sanity. And I mean,
yes.
I'm 50 years old. I'm a musician, EMT.
And can you prove that?
I'm a drummer. Bam.
Well, you are pretty good. My son likes to drum, too. He's a huge Rush fan. Not only Rush Limbaugh, but the band Rush.
Oh, Neil Peart's an excellent drummer. Your son.
That's his
Chase.
That's his favorite drummer.
Well, to keep practicing and keep practicing, because that's the only way to do it. No great a teacher's not going to solve your problems. Just time behind the drum sets will do it.
That's right. In my earplugs. Go ahead.